to create one, a story of battles both lost and won. Yet I will tell and sing my song, whether it's short or long. It will define the truth of choice, for I have a voice.
The human voice is a powerful instrument, speaking, singing, crying, moaning. We share our stories through our voices. Our life experiences are liberated through our recollections, and we all can be empowered through hearing others' voices, for we each have a story, and we each have a voice. You have a voice. I, too, have a voice. Of the 21 public elementary schools in Topeka in 1951, only 4 welcomed Black children to attend. These 4 schools were Buchanan, McKinley, Monroe, and Washington elementary schools. The other 18 Topeka elementary schools were for white children only. These 4 schools had been established by the Topeka School Board in 1928 to serve Black children from kindergarten to grade 8. Prior to 1879, small Kansas communities with limited resources educated all children, no matter their race, in what was usually a single school system. And often, that was a one-room schoolhouse. But with community growth came an exclusion option. Communities which grew to populations greater than 15,000 could segregate their schools based on race. In the 1880s, white Topekans found this position advantageous. But rather than force segregation into current schools, as the city's population grew, new school buildings were erected for its Black children. These schools, Buchanan, McKinley, Monroe, and Washington, were similar in structure, resources, and comforts to the existing schools for white students only. But they were exclusively for the Black students who were forbidden to attend their whites-only segregated neighborhood schools. By the fall of 1928, these 4 schools were fully staffed and ready to serve all of Topeka's Black elementary students. Many of the city's leaders and the parents of students in the whites-only schools were glad to see these little Black children go to their own schools, though their actions violated the Black children's personal, academic, and civil rights under the Constitution of the United States. Therefore, a series of lawsuits were filed to register those wrongs. None of these were successful until the Brown case just 2 decades later. These Black Topeka citizens had a voice, but their voices were ignored. Monroe was the only elementary of the 4 which remained a neighborhood school for 2 decades following the 1954 Brown decision. Monroe closed in 1975. McKinley closed in 1954, and both Buchanan and Washington closed in 1959. Between 1882 and 1908, black children in North Topeka had to attend the segregated Lane School. Then, from 1908 to 1954, McKinley Elementary School served all the black children who lived in North Topeka. This segment of Topeka was bordered by the Kansas River, farmlands, a small but budding downtown area, the railroad, and the Sardu River. Many residents were employed with the railroads and some worked on area farms. However, the 1951 flood changed everything. The school was destroyed internally. While it was being renovated, McKinley students were forced to attend Buchanan Elementary School across the Topeka Boulevard Bridge, located at Southwest 12th and Buchanan Streets, an area which had not been impacted by the flood. McKinley reopened in the fall of 1952. However, after the Brown decision in 1954, McKinley was closed permanently at the end of that school year. Our voices will share their reflections on two primary schools whose neighborhoods were geographically segregated based on neighborhood composition. Buchanan Elementary School was located in an area called Tennessee Town. The original school was built in 1885 as a neighborhood school for the black children whose families had settled in this area after their arrivals in Topeka between 1878 and 1881. They were called the Exodusters because they were freed slaves who migrated north from many southern states. The Exodusters also settled in the Washington Elementary School area. In fact, the Washington Elementary School neighborhood held the largest concentrations of black families in Topeka.
My name is Anthony Jones, and I grew up in Tennessee Town at 1178 Lincoln Street, across the alley from Buchanan Elementary School. I was the last kindergarten to be at Buchanan School. In my kindergarten class, we had one family that was white. The rest of the whole school was black. They closed down all the black schools in the city, and because of the desegregation, and we did not have all the tools that the white schools had, books. We didn't have a gym, a big gym. We just weren't at the same level as Loman Hill School. They closed the school down and they marched us to our new school. My principal at the school was Miss Barber, and the highlight that I remember about her is that I got my first paddling from her because I had done something at school, run my mouth or something. And at that day, the village, she called my mother, told her that she was bringing me home. My mother met us, since we lived across the alley from Buchanan School. She met us at the edge of the alley. She had some switches, and she whooped me from the alley to the house. That was my fondest memory of Miss Barber.
Buchanan, it was like a family, really. I mean, you knew everybody.
Yeah.
It was like our neighborhood place that we all hung out together during the day. In the summertime, we go to Buchanan, and Buchanan was our baseball field. I mean, we would play baseball all day down at Buchanan on their baseball field. And so it was like, that's our family, our home place. And so we didn't want, to leave
it and lose it.
Yeah. I liked going to Buchanan. I thought my kindergarten teacher was the prettiest lady I'd ever seen. I mean, she was nice, but I really thoroughly enjoyed going to school. They always taught us to be respectful for other people, and they taught us how to be patient, because a lot of times they'd have us sit, like before school was out. Okay, everybody sat at your desk, you had your hands folded, and you sat there and you sat quietly. And you didn't move, you just sat there until the bell rang. Then when the bell rang, then when the teacher says you could go, you go. You didn't just hop up and go. When the teacher say, okay, you're dismissed, then we would get up and go. But that was just teaching us how to be patient, how to be respectful of other people. We were respectful of other people's belongings and what have you. And it was kind of like the same values that we were learning at home, they carried over also in the school. And I don't know if it was because the teachers, they lived in the neighborhoods with us, and so we were always around them and saw them, even like at the stores and doing yard work and at church and different places. Now when we went to Loman Hill, no, it was just what we learned out of the books. They didn't teach us anything about how to address people, how to even dress, or how to do much of anything but learn. When they did close Buchanan, my question to my parents was, well, why? Why are they closing our school? Why don't they close their school and send them over here? My mom, she was just glad that we were going over to Loman Hill.
The rural Loman Hill district was annexed into the Topeka city limits in the 1890s. Few African Americans lived in this area, but for those who did, all of their children attended the school for that community with the white children who also lived there. After a mysterious fire destroyed the school in July of 1900, a new school was built, but it was just for the white children. The black children were forced to attend Douglas School, a 2-room, run-down building which had been quickly prepared to serve these students who were not allowed to attend the rebuilt Loman Hill School with the white students. Then, the black students were sent to the all-black Buchanan Elementary School. Students in these two communities were in neighborhoods which had a diverse representation of racial groups. School segregation for children who resided in diverse neighborhoods was, by law, to separate black children on the basis of their skin color only. This fact was one of the prevailing points for the success of the argument in favor of the Topeka NAACP and the children represented in the Brown case.
Education changed once we got to Loman Hill. With that many blacks infiltrating Loman Hill at the time, a lot of the white teachers really didn't know how to deal with us. And it was kind of chaotic for the first probably year or two, kind of settled down after that. But it was a different kind of education. When we were in Buchanan School, they told us that you represented you couldn't do bad because you represented the black community. And some of the white teachers really didn't know how to deal with that. So that was a difficulty. A lot of fights, a lot of adjustments that happened. My last principal was a black principal, which is J.B. Holland. who was attended Shiloh Baptist Church, and he was the first black principal of Norman Hill.
Okay, then I went to Norman Hill. That's when I punched a girl.
I know it.
And you know, my mom told me before I went to school, because my mom knew me.
Yeah.
She said, now Sonia, don't go over there and start nothing over there at the school, okay? I said, okay, Mom, I won't. What did I do? When the girl said, you ends, go home, my head turned so quick, I grabbed her by the neck and I punched her. Got expelled from school.
Yeah.
3 days.
And what about her?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And my mom had to walk from the house over to Norman Hill to get me and take me home. And she said, Sonia, she said, I knew you was going to go over there and start something.
But you didn't start
I
it.
said, Mama, I couldn't help it.
I had made a lot of friends at Norman Hill, black and white, you know, and I remember going over to my white friends' houses after school, and we play, do whatever when we were in elementary school, and then we all moved on to Boswell as well, so they were there. And, we got along fine. I didn't have any problems with any of the teachers.
All in all, the teachers were very nice. They taught us well.
Yeah.
And I loved all my teachers. But they were in the neighborhood.
Washington Elementary was built in 1911 to serve neighborhood children whose families came to Topeka from Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, and other southern states. This area of town was nicknamed Mudtown, as it remained underdeveloped in comparison to the west side of the train tracks for many years. In 1905, black students at the overcrowded Washington School were refused entrance to Parkdale Elementary School, just 3 blocks away. The Parkdale area had been incorporated into the city of Topeka in 1900, and its residents were known to be very prejudiced. A July 4, 1905 article in the Topeka Daily Capital stated, "The fact that racial prejudice exists in Parkdale is well known. In fact, anti-Negro sentiment is stronger in that section than any other part of the city." Washington Elementary was closed in 1959, 5 years after the historic Brown decision was handed down.
When we talk about going to Washington, and again, let's remember, I'm in the kindergarten. I'm 5 years old. Man, I don't know nothing about I don't know nothing about Washington. My environment, again, like I said, was totally, as we said, then colored or Negroes. So that's all I knew. And so going to Washington, that was just going to school. That was my particular environment. That was just going to school. Again, all around me, watch this, from the principals all the way down to the custodian,
All black.
to the teacher was black. And so I knew that when I went to school, already being enforced to me by my parents, even just being 5-year-old, don't you act up, boy, when you go to school, because if you act up, you know what's going to happen. And we knew what was going to happen. There was going to be consequences of getting that butt whooped or something like that. And I also knew when I got to the school, they had the same permission. If I acted a fool in any way, they knew they had every opportunity for me to suffer the consequences for me acting a fool. I knew that. That was a part of my thinking. And so that registered, I knew that at the school and down the street, those folks were going to treat me the same way my parents would treat me if I acted a fool. But watch this. Same way, bless me. If I acted right, let me know I'm doing okay. That was my environment.
I say that Washington gave me the experiences that a lot of kids wish they had with the black college thing, because Mr. Ross was the principal at that time, and Mr. Alexander was the janitor. Miss Norman was the nurse. And then we had all the teachers, Miss Bradshaw, Miss, just a lot of them, and they had taught my dad and them. And in fact, when Curtis Pitts was looking for some information about the Spirit of Washington, I had already gotten it because my aunt was in the movie, The Spirit of Washington School, that 501 had done of a day in Washington School.
Between 1968 and 1970, there was a fire in the sky, a zeitgeist of a movement, the spirit of the time, when suppressed voices at Topeka High School, Highland Park High School, Lawrence High School, Kent State, Ohio, Jackson State, Mississippi, Los Angeles, California, all across the nation and even around the world, shouted in unity, "We have a voice, and somebody better listen to us, or else."
That I was a cheerleader, and I was the only black cheerleader, and I was on B team, and there was another black cheerleader on A team, but I knew there was a difference in me being black and the rest of that team being white. I knew there was a difference, and I never felt comfortable associating with them. I would beg my mom when they would go to out-of-town games like Atchison, and I would beg, I didn't want to ride the bus with them. Okay, I don't remember any particular thing that happened to me because of my skin. I just knew that I did not want to ride that bus with them. And in my begging my mom and her love for her daughter, she allowed me to go in a car that she knew would not make it. So we ended up burning the engine out of that car because the radiator had a leak in it, and we kept putting water in it and all that, and she had talked one of our teammates into driving, not teammates, peers, into driving and destroyed that car because she heard my cry. But yes, there was, I just don't have vivid memory of that, I would call it a tangible racial abuse.
That I used to have, there was a family that used to sell newspapers, and I was always beat them to mine, and I'd be selling them where they supposed to be selling, so they give me a nice little run home every day. But I sold my newspaper.
But I remember my last year of high school, when we had that assembly in the gym for King and Queen Court.
Oh, yeah.
And the ones who were nominated for were all white. But the black kids, they was tired. We did a boycott. We walked out on that. Because it's like our basketball players were were all black.
Right.
But we didn't have no representation. And so after that, on the walkout, we stayed right outside of them. We didn't leave the building. But we walked out on that. And then next thing you know, there was a fire in the auditorium, and they tried to say, Gail did it.
I was on crutches.
And he was on crutches because he had broke his leg.
Yeah. We had a situation, I was on part of the school paper, and they asked me to write an article, which I did, which it was about what was going on at that particular time, which is civil unrest and all of that. And they went ahead and put it in the paper, but right after that, they dropped me from the paper. And so I kind of told them off about that one too, but it just let me know kind of what's really, what's going on. I mean, I don't know that we ran into that a lot, but during that phase there was a lot of that going on where I think a lot of us as black kids really realized what was going on. There's a place right now that I will never eat. because they wouldn't service back then, that's Bobos. But that situation there was a situation, and that's when everything really just kind of blew up. Because what it was they canceled because Topeka High was going to come over with their Black Student Union and the band, and we had it all planned out. And they made us close ours down. And then later on that day, they let one of the Miniger ladies, Kathy Miniger, come over and have an assembly. And you took everybody out of the class to make sure they went to that assembly. But we could not have our assembly. And at that moment, that's when everything else began to kind of unfold about some of the things that were going on in the school system. And how they were really trying to deprive us of an opportunity to have that assembly. I remember at Highland Park, they used to have Scott singers, okay? And I remember telling the guy, I said, let me tell you something. I said, I got 5 black people in this class right now. I'll sing with everybody you got on that stage right there. I said, but you won't allow us to be a part of that. You know, when it came time to do the shows, you know, the South Pacific and all of that, same person all the time. You know, same guy, same person, same people. You know, I said, and you know it. You know it. I said, but you just won't accept the fact that we have gifts as well. So that, to me, that one there used to bother me the most, you know, because that was my gift of singing. And I knew that there were people at Highland Park and Topeka High as well. You know, just give us an opportunity and we'll show you where it's at. But we never got those chances. And to be in reality, they do the same thing even now. You know, they want to pick on the stuff that really doesn't matter when you want to talk about something that has substance. You know, so we have to deal with this. You know, they're talking about, you know, people that kneel during the Star Spangled Banner. That has nothing to do in totality of what's going on with people of color in this country. So you want to pick that out, you know, instead of trying to address the issues at hand. And so they would do the same thing, you know, even then. You know, I can't believe that you did that. I think one other time we sat down when the Star Spangled Banner was going on, and man, they almost had a conniption. You know, I think they were, next time you're going to be kicked out of school. I'm like, that's fine. I said, we got your attention, you know, at least, you know, so let's talk about what's not happening. And out of all of that is when everything, you know, after we all left school and went to school over here at Lane Chapel, you know, had a few bomb threats. They were going to blow the place up because we were going to school there. Just a lot of stuff.
I was probably one of the handful of students that went to Topeka High during the riots. And I said, Mom, I don't want to. She says, you're going to Topeka High School. So she had a 60, I think it was a 65 Malibu, Chevy Malibu. And she drove me to the door sidewalk, the west sidewalk going into Topeka High School. When I went up to the school, there was a guy there named Freddie Ishman, and he had a pistol. And he told me, he said, Jones, you breaking the boycott. You can't come in the school. You got to go over there. And I said, man, look, I'm not scared of that gun. You see that lady out there in that car in that Malibu? I'm more scared of her than you. And he looked over there, and my mom was looking. And so they let me into school. And every day my mother would drive me to this corner of the school, and I walked in. But as a result of that, I became student body president my senior year, and I had an office beside the principal's office. And I think at the time, either Principal Barnett or Principal Bump was there at the time. And during those times, we had music from Miniker's suggested that they pump music through the hallways, the commas down. So they had music pumping all day long during that period of time. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't boycott, because I didn't have a choice. It was either go to school or get killed by my mother. So I chose to have life and I went to school every day.
First 2 weeks or so, no, my parents allowed us not to go, and we went to Lane's Chapel. We participated with the folks at Lane Chapel. We learned things about what was going on at T High. It was a good experience, okay. But after about 2 weeks, my dad said, nah, back to school. And when Vernon Senior said, back to school, back to school. he felt like something that we might be caught up in something like that. And he didn't want us caught up in that. You know? And again, when I think about some of the folks that led even in the walkout, again, I don't know what their intent was. I don't know what their intent was. I believe they had good intentions, especially as far as was concerned with what had happened to them in the school system. So I believe they had good intentions. Whether their intentions were right or wrong, I don't know. But I do know because of what they did, it did help for our environment to change in 501 at Topeka High School. So I'm appreciative of that. But anybody who led in the walkout or got involved in that walkout, they had their own intentions for what they were or not going to do. I walked out because everybody walked out, so I walked out. Okay, and in the walking out, I found out the dilemmas of the things that was going on. Because if you'd asked me, I was cool with school. You know, I go to school, I'm through, I go home. You know, I was cool with it. So the issues that were being brought out, I didn't recognize some of those things might have been going on in our particular environment. Okay, understood them after the walkout. Okay, well, this is not happening. And we don't have any benefits, and these things are going on, but they hadn't affected me directly because I hadn't thought about them before the walkout and all. So I'm saying again, the changes that were made, the liberties that we were given because of the walkout, that was meant to help us in the school system. Those things, when they were allotted to us, were good things, and you had a choice to use them in a way that would benefit you, or the choice of the way they would hurt you. And it seemed to me a lot of our people used it to the point where it hurt them rather than benefited them, because they used this liberty we had to do what they wanted to do rather than to do what the liberties were given to us for, to help us to be better scholars and help us be better Black people in the environment that we were in. Okay.
And what changes were made after the walkout that people took advantage of in a positive way or a negative?
Well, again, a part of the changes was they gave us liberties for the new classes, such as, like I said, they gave us opportunity to have Black History class, and we didn't have Black History before that. Okay, so that was good. That helped our environment. We were given the liberties of having a Topeka High has always had a good band, but we were given the liberty of having what was called the Black Stage Band. And so having a band that consisted of Black musicians and all, singers, dancers, and whatever else. And because of that particular environment, that helped me to start my band, the Black Velvet. That's where we came from, being the Black band there at Topeka High School, because before, wasn't no such thing. And so we didn't get to play music from the genres that we like. We just played whatever the teacher said they had to play. But with that expansion, Black Stage Band, dancers, we had singers, we had that particular environment, that liberty was given to us. We were given the opportunity, again, to have what was called a student lounge, where you could go down in the lounge area and be able to play games, learn things, do certain things. And
like on your breaks.
Oh, yeah, on your breaks. Those freedoms. Well, people would take those particular freedoms, like that lounge thing, man, and be in that lounge all day. And some of them, like I said, went all the school year, but knew they weren't going to walk off stage to get no diploma. Oh. And the good thing about it was just subtle. Let's make that perfect clear, it was subtle. A lot of folks did not. A lot of folks did well by the freedoms we had and walked in them well. We only had a few, and for me, the few were, particularly in my classroom, and they just blew away.
So we didn't have after school daycare or didn't have school buses to pick us up and take us places. We just walked, and we walked, joyfully. Didn't have any problems walking, didn't have any incidents, or no one tried to kidnap us. And so we felt very comfortable and very, I think, secure in our neighborhood and didn't have to worry about crime and violence. I remember, we played kickball outside under the street lights. We used to have kickball kinds of tournaments in the neighborhood, and sometimes it's like 11, 12 o'clock at night, we still playing kickball. Mm-hmm. And so, but we felt safe and secure, and so it wasn't a problem for our parents to let us stay out.
I went to Highland Park, and they were very gracious there. And she showed it. And she was handing everybody their books. And then when she got to me, she threw it out. I picked the book up and threw it back at her. Mm-hmm. I said, "You don't throw it to me, and I won't throw it to you." So I was suspended from school. And then I told Mother what happened, and she went up there, and I was back in school. Yeah, but the teacher never, when I was around, she wouldn't come in the room. They sent another teacher to take her place. She might have touched the other classes, but not the one I was in. Yeah,
so there was a big difference between
yes.
Buchanan and...
Because that's the first time I experienced it for myself.
So I didn't have any trouble at Topeka High School. As a matter of fact, that's where I met my husband at. Topeka High School, yeah.
Well, I was taking the ACT test. I scored really high on it. And so my counselor called me in, and she was questioning why I scored, she said, "This doesn't make sense. Your grades don't reflect what you did on your ACT test." And it was like, you should be like an A student. Well, back then, a lot of the teachers didn't want to award the black students with the grades that they were really earning.
Right.
And they would find ways to make it so that you didn't get really the grade that you really deserved. I remember in one class, it was an English class, we had to write a paper, and my friend, we were going to go to the next class. Well, she wanted to discuss her paper with the teacher afterwards. And so I said, okay, I'll wait. So I'm sitting there waiting, and they're arguing over her paper because of a comma. She thought the comma should have gone here. He thought, no, that should have been here or something like that. And so because of that, he marked her down on her paper. I mean, I'm thinking, just because you make a mistake with a comma, that's still an A paper, isn't it? Well, he didn't want to give her an A on her paper because of the comma. So she stayed there. She must have argued with him for about 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm like, hey, you're going to miss class, about a comma. And she was pretty upset because she thought she deserved an A on her paper. And he was real stern and said, no, I'm not going to give you an A.
Now back to your counselor. After she saw your ACT score, did she recommend that you go to college? Did she advise you on scholarships or anything?
I don't ever remember getting any really encouragement from counselors in high school as to where to go or even to pursue a college career or anything like that. We just, most of our friends and all, we all did it though, went to college. All the friends that I hung out with, we did. Every last one of them went to college, graduated, and moved on to good careers.
We didn't do a lot of socializing because at that time, our churches, the Church of God in Christ, was not really involved with a lot of social issues. We were involved with churches as far as musicals and that kind of thing. But we didn't do a lot of movies, we didn't do a lot of dances, we didn't do a lot of that. We did walk on 4th Street, and 4th Street had everything that black folks owned it. We had Pastor Nealon at the New Jerusalem Baptist Church. So we go way back. We had their own bakery, grocery store, all of that. Even on the west side, we had Miss Jackson in Tennessee Town. She had her own store, her own grocery store. So I walked through all of that as far as those persons are concerned.
I lived at 12th and Washington, so I lived in the neighborhood. And I was one of those that was blessed. My church was Antioch. It was there in the neighborhood. My dad grew up in that neighborhood, and when my mom moved here when she was 13, she ended up in the neighborhood. So I was blessed because I got to be one of those that the village raised. My grandmother lived at East 13th Street. My grandfather lived on 12th Street like we did, and so did one of my uncles, and so did one of my aunts, and so did one of my great aunts around the corner. And at one time, another uncle rented down the street from us, and another aunt and uncle rented across the street from us. So everybody knew the Steeles, everybody in the neighborhood, so it was the normal. You knew you didn't mess up because you was going to get a spanking here and a spanking there. But at 10th Street Market, Stump Powell we had the dairy stop, we had a laundromat, we had barbershops, little packaged goods stores. The only time we left our community was my dad would get paid once a month. We'd go to North Topeka to Sutton's, shop at that grocery store, and then we'd come back into our neighborhood where we were loved. Because
when I left that school, that wonderful school, stepped out the door, across the street was my church, Antioch Missionary Baptist Church. Across the street from that was a watch house that we went to watch to. On the other side of Washington School was my family members, the Browns, in houses there. I walked down the street, down the street, and here's the people that lives in my community. All of them are black. Turn the corner and edge of my house, what's there? Everything is black, all right? So the environment I was raised in at that time, again, using the terms they used for us colored or Negroes, it was totally us colored or Negroes. It was black. That's what we were. That's what we seen. All the neighbors, same story. So, in particular, as a child, everything around me reinforced everything that I learned from my mom and my daddy, that I learned from my church, and that I learned and was reinforced at the school that I went to. Because we all at that time were from that same particular culture. I don't think hardly anybody at that given time, Damani, was not going to some particular church in that area. They did not have a relationship with God in some way, because that was our environment. That's what we learned. All right.
Totally white. There were some Mexicans. I remember them getting in trouble if they would speak Spanish to each other. They'd be sent to the principal's office, getting paddled. So that was greatly discouraged. But I think I was the only black child in a lot of my classes. Wasn't treated any differently by the teachers, but by the students, they knew that there was, something not quite right about my skin color. Wasn't white like them. So, but when we came to Monroe, and I was in 6th grade at Monroe, and had a black teacher for the first time ever in my life, it was what was her name?
Miss Barber, I think.
Miss Barber. Oh, somebody else knew Miss Barber. And who was the principal at Monroe School?
Miss Walker.
Miss Walker. Yeah, I remember her walking the halls. I mean, she was there to keep order in the court. But it was a whole new experience, and there was kind of a hierarchy, and of course.
In 1st grade, I had a white friend, and I went over her house one day after school. Didn't call mom and dad, say I'm going over there. Ate dinner over there, and went on home, like no big deal, and got in big trouble. Because my mom didn't know where I was, Dad didn't know where, so I didn't understand the significance of it, and I had to be an adult to think these things through later on. But the next day at school, the white teacher spanked me in front of the kids at school in class for not going home. which I don't know how it was her business to do that. But I sit back and think about your mom going up to school. My mom was like, hey, they don't do right in school, you get them, I'll get them when you come back here, and then Dad will get them when he come off of work. And I'm like, that ain't how other parents do it, Mom. But that's how my parents decided. But my dad was born in 1914. My mom was born in 1916. And they came from an era they didn't want to make waves. If we can put it under the rug, that's what we'll do. We don't make waves.
Because those houses were built on slabs. When the tornado hit Lawrence, we go to Antioch, which is a church I went to, into the basement, the whole community, because all the houses were on slabs. And we would go there for safety. So as far as I was concerned, Washington School was safe, Antioch was safe, the neighborhood was safe because they took care of us.
I remember that Ripley Park was ours until the tornado hit and took it all away. But that's the only place where you were allowed, other than East Topeka, to go to a little school dance or sock hops. And my parents, and I remember all of us took swimming, the whole family took swimming lessons at Ripley Park, which was nice. It was, Ripley Park was our park. And then, like you said, then they opened East Lawn, Samuel L. Jackson, and then they tried to make Hillcrest, but it never quite took hold, not like Ripley Park did. Ripley Park was ours.
The human voice is a powerful instrument. Through speaking, singing, crying, and even moaning, we share our stories through our voices and our voices through our stories. Our life experiences are liberated through our recollections, and we all can be empowered through hearing others' voices. We each have a story. We each have a voice. You have a voice. I, too, have a voice.